These are my note cards. This is my prop. And then this is the audience, including the person filming. Beat the Clock drink specials include 50-cent margaritas and Mexican beers starting at 10 a.m. all day, increasing 50 cents every hour until 5 p.m. Sounds amazing, right? This is a 2012 Cinco de Mayo special at Max Tequila Bar at Power Plant Live in Baltimore, Maryland. These type of drink specials on Cinco de Mayo are wildly sponsored by bars all across America. But how did this holiday become so alcohol-centered and popular in the United States when it didn't even originate here? Jose Alamillo, an ethnic studies professor at the University of Washington State University at Pullman, explains that in the 1960s, Chicano activists embraced Cinco de Mayo in order to promote Mexican-American culture in the face of racism. In the 1980s, U.S. companies used Cinco de Mayo in order to promote their alcohol, perhaps, or their products in order to gain profit. It led to a commercialization of Cinco de Mayo and celebrating a holiday that we may not know much about. The specific purpose of this speech is to explain the evolution of Cinco de Mayo, and in doing so, I will explain the history, as well as how it's celebrated in Mexico and how it came to be widely celebrated in America. To understand the evolution, we must begin with the history. Cinco de Mayo is not the 4th of July celebration for Mexico. It marks the day where the Mexican army beat the French troops at the Battle of Puebla in 1862. Stefan Lofgren, an author for National Geographic, explained how Emperor Louis Napoleon III sent French troops into Mexico in order to gain territory in the Americas and halt the spread of the U.S. Karol Najewski, author of Cinco de Mayo, Celebrating Hispanic Pride, explains that Napoleon did so, knowing that America was in the midst of a civil war and would be unable to assist the Mexican troops in the battle, and also that the Mexican troops were highly untrained. The Mexican troops consisted of shopkeepers, ranchers, farmers, and Zapotec Indians. Their weapons consisted of long knives, farm tools, sticks and stones, and they even used a herd of cattle to stampede the French troops. Ultimately, the Mexican army beat the French troops at the Battle of Puebla on the 5th of May. Although they won the battle, they ultimately lost the war a year later. Because this battle held such sentiment among Mexicans, it's still celebrated, it's just not a national celebrated holiday. John Noble, Lonely Planet's travel guide to Mexico, doesn't even include Cinco de Mayo in the top 5 events or holidays of Mexico. David Bautista, the author of El Cinco de Mayo, An American Tradition, wrote about his trip to Guadalajara, Mexico, and explained that rather than witness the most spectacular Cinco de Mayo festivities of his life, he witnessed the fact that it's not even a major celebration in Mexico. Cinco de Mayo is primarily celebrated in Mexico City and Puebla only. Karol Najewski accounts how these celebrations that do occur are traditional in their dance and food, and they often include a reenactment of the Battle of Puebla. Cinco de Mayo spread to America with immigration. It began as cultural pride celebrations and ultimately led in the commercialization of this holiday. In the 1960s, Chicano activists began using it among them to create unity in the face of racism. Jose Alamillo said in his speech at the Smithsonian that in the face of racial discrimination and limited economic opportunity, festival organizers used Cinco de Mayo to promote ethnic consciousness, build community solidarity, and defend the community against racist and nativist attacks. From these celebrations came political and economic agendas. In the 1970s, the city officials of Corona, California renamed the Cinco de Mayo celebration just to attract tourists and create revenue for the city. In the 80s, it became a sales pitch for U.S. companies, primarily alcohol companies, to make profits. John Noble sums up the evolution perfectly in this quote. In 1862, General Ignacio de Zaragoza fortified the Cerro de Guadalupe against French invaders. And on May 5th that year, his 2,000 men defeated a frontal attack of 6,000. This rare Mexican military success is the reason for annual and increasingly corporate-sponsored and drunken celebrations in the USA, where the holiday is far more significant than in Mexico. In conclusion, I would leave you with the thought that Cinco de Mayo began with an unlikely Mexican win that evolved into a tool used to create solidarity among Mexican Americans against racism and led to a corporate-sponsored holiday in America. Even though many Americans don't know the meaning of Cinco de Mayo for Mexicans, the holiday helps them embrace the largest minority populace in the U.S. Rather than creating unity just among Mexican Americans, Cinco de Mayo creates unity among all Americans. Let's cheers our 50-cent Coronas to that unity that Cinco de Mayo created.
Not bad.